Welcome. This is Our Android Week with Alan Furstenberg in New York, grouchy as ever. Bruce Turner in Lynchburg, Virginia, keeping us in line. Duke Carrico in Kingsport, Tennessee. Michael Banks in Augusta, Georgia. And Nate Swanner in Portland, Oregon. This is Our Android Week. Great to have you with us. Not too much Android news. So this week, lots of Google news and lots of tech news and stuff. But I wanted to bring on a special guest. And let's introduce him now. This is Stephen Haywood from the Tech Buzz and Broadcast Now. Stephen, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan.
So you tell us real quick your shows and where folks can find you.
I have a bunch of shows, but you can find all about them at thetechbuzz.net.
Thetechbuzz.net. And your wife is wrapping Christmas presents, right? So if any of your kids are watching, we don't want any spoilers. So avert your eyes, kids. Okay. All right. We don't want any drama, any disappointment on Christmas because they already knew everything. Okay. So let's see. We got introducing the panel here. We got Alan Furstenberg in New York. Welcome, Alan.
Hey, Dan.
And Bruce Turner. Hey.
Long time no see.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been.
He's worried about getting coal in his Our Android Week stocking, so he showed up tonight. Good for him. Okay, so first topic is this interesting gamepad. One of the stories said it's not a very creative name. It's the smartphone gamepad, but it's kind of an interesting looking device. So
let's deal with the name thing right up front. This is Samsung, the company that introduced the word phablet.
So
I for one am glad that they actually went with a name that makes sense.
It's basically, it turns your phone into a Game Boy, right? That's what this is?
Well, it's a game controller.
So folks watching, it's just so you see it flips up and you can mount it's designed, I think it's a general Android device, but it's there's stuff that works with the Galaxy line that won't work with other phones, like the play button, I think, and you can slide your phone in there. And so it kind of holds it. It looks it's like a Game Boy. It's kind of a neat little contraption. I'm not sure what the price is, though. Do we know the price?
I don't think I've seen a price listed for it. It's got a number of nice little things to it. It's a Bluetooth keyboard, essentially. So anything that'll work with Bluetooth will work with it. It's got a tiny battery of its own, which I guess is good enough. Yeah, there are some things that are Samsung specific, but pretty much anything that'll be able to handle Bluetooth will be able to work with this.
And I guess you could run the HDMI cable out of your USB thing, or the USB to HDMI cable out of your phone, and you could have the play happening on your television set if you wanted. I think you can do that.
I don't know.
Maybe Bruce could tell us. Bruce, are you going to rush out and buy several of these?
Absolutely not.
Have you got one, Steven? Is that a demo model? Or did you buy one?
I have one that's made by a company called Moga, but it's essentially the same thing that they released, where you can put your phone in it. It's wireless or Bluetooth, and you just download the app. And certain games that Moga makes will allow you to play it, like you said, just like a Game Boy.
So how much was it? How old is it? And how do you like it?
So last year I bought this. It was normally like $150, but the company put it out there for, I think it was $15.
Wow.
It was like some killer Christmas deal. It was around this time. And so you jumped on it. It was one of those, I'm sure you've seen it with other Android stuff, it was there for I don't know, an hour, and then they sold out of it. And so I jumped on it and bought it, and I like it so much. This is the first time I pulled it out in probably 8 months.
That's probably in the same place that Craig Ship's Chromecast is. He's always trolling us about his Chromecast. He says, I'm not sure where it is. Bruce, what do you think?
Well, a question that I would have for Stephen as he held up his there, as I look at the picture on this website, how secure is your expensive phone in that spring-loaded thing holding down? Because most people I see playing games, they're just kind of moving it around. I'd be concerned that my phone would slide out of there.
That's an interesting question.
It seems to be pretty. I mean, it's pretty. It holds it in there pretty tight, and it's got little grooves in it. I don't know if you can see it, but there's some two-sided rubber. And I apologize for the video tonight, guys, but it does have some rubber grip inside there, and I'm gonna put my phone in it, just kind of show you. And it's not. I mean, I'm really, I'm shaking it, and it's hitting everything else under the sun. But I mean, I don't know if I would give this to your 3-year-old or 5-year-old and say, here you go. But for somebody that's a little bit more responsible, I think it's fine.
Cool. All right.
That's just my.
Yeah, that's a good question, Bruce. Because kids get they're in a aggressive game, and they're gonna move around and get aggressive. Okay, so this is a story that Alan brought to our attention.
Before we move on, Dan, we have a comment, and remember, we're always taking comments, but we had this one from Rich that I wanted to target at Bruce. I'm downloading my 4.3 upgrade for the Note 2 right now. Thanks for the info earlier. Do you have any suggestions or warnings for Rich, Bruce?
Well, my warning, first of all, I know that I was rooted when I took the over-the-air update. I know that Nick Craig was rooted when he accepted the over-the-air update. Both of us have lost the ability to connect Wi-Fi with our Note 2s. If you are rooted, I would caution you against it. If you were not rooted, I would proceed. I'm assuming that the fact that we were rooted has something to do with a bootloader that caused this update not to go well for us.
Have you come up with a solution, Bruce?
I don't know. Nick tweeted me just a few minutes ago before we went on the air and said that he was that he had an appointment or had a call with AT&T tomorrow night. So I guess the only saving grace is AT&T finally brought LTE to Lynchburg. Can you believe that, Dan? Lynchburg has got LTE, so I've got plenty of data on my phone, and I've got the grandfathered unlimited plan, but I'm sure going to miss my Wi-Fi until I can get this fixed.
So can you do a factory reset?
Well, I just finished doing a helium backup, and so that's my assumption, that is I could do a factory reset. I believe the zip file for the over-the-air update is in my download folder. I don't know if it is. I'll put it in there. Otherwise, a factory reset is in store for me, I'm sure.
Now, Bruce, this is because you were rooted issue, not because of the specific.
I'm assuming it was because I was rooted.
But who was it? Rich who had it as well? The same issue, or who had the same issue? Did they have the same mod you were running, or
Nick Craig and I both had the i317 model Galaxy Note 2. There's an N7100. There's some other letter prefix 900. They got the 4.3 update earlier, but the 4.3 update for i317 model Samsung Galaxy Note 2s on AT&T rolled out this morning. And Nick and I were both rooted when we accepted the over-the-air update, and we both have lost Wi-Fi. So my advice would be, if you're rooted, don't take the update until you clear the root. I'm assuming, I'm assuming the root had something to do with the loss of Wi-Fi, because I can't find anybody else reporting this.
Well, hopefully there's enough folks to where they'll come up with a solution. Enough folks impacted. So AT&T wasn't like, you're screwed, you shouldn't have rooted. They were helpful.
Well, I'm not. I don't know. I mean,
or did you not volunteer that information?
That is correct.
I didn't fib. I just didn't volunteer any information.
Yeah, and the only reason I was rooted was so I could run, the program that we enjoy using, AirDroid, for demoing our app of the week. And so now I'm forced to do it with a screen share this evening, because I have also lost my root. So I lost Wi-Fi, and I lost my. I knew I'd lose my root when I accepted the over-the-air update. I did not know that I would lose the Wi-Fi ability.
AirDroid doesn't work unless you're rooted?
Not for the screen share portion. You can use AirDroid for everything else, but if you want to do screen share, you have to be rooted.
And that's a Samsung app.
No, AirDroid is not a Samsung app.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So be warned. Yeah, because I have the update and my Wi-Fi is working fine, but I'm on Sprint, so I got it earlier than you. It's a different carrier version, right? They each have to put their own bloatware on. Okay, are we good on that? And then we'll go to the story that you turned us on to, Alan. Okie doke. All right, so an analytics study shows that 2013 was a big year for Android gaming. And I also wanted to discuss, I've seen stories lately about the decline in straight up paid apps, and especially in games, and the rise of the freemium model, which reminds me a lot of the old days where you'd get shareware. I remember playing Moraph's Revenge when I was many years ago, and in the DOS days, and you could get the free version, and then it was basically you're in a dungeon maze and you're killing creatures and you're advancing and then killing stronger creatures and you're stronger, and then all of a sudden, to proceed, you have to buy the paid version. And so we've seen that with all these Android games. And I'm not sure if Alan's here. Is he?
Yes, he's here.
I'm here. It's Bruce that was appearing and disappearing.
Okay. So you want to talk about both of those things?
There was a lot of interesting numbers in this report, which was kind of neat to read, and I'm still actually trying to digest all of them. I think the interesting numbers for me was that in looking just at the top 200 apps, it did a comparison between iOS and Play Store. On iOS, those top 200 apps a year ago earned 15 million, and this year earned 18 million, while the Play Store's 200 top apps a year ago earned 3.5 million and now earn 12 million. So, one of the things that we've heard a lot from publishers is that, they're kind of hesitant to make the Android version of things because they can't make as much money from it. And I think this is showing that tide is changing very dramatically. The other big number that you noted is when it comes to the freemium apps, where it's free and you pay something either to get a different trinket or for some feature. Currently on Google Play, that accounts for 98% of the revenue. That's ridiculously high.
That's amazing. Yeah, in-app. Is that an in-app purchase? Is that what you call it?
Basically, that's in-app purchases. Yeah.
It's smart though. I mean, your first hit of heroin's free, and then I'm going to start charging you, right? I mean,
right.
It's
and it makes it easy to charge you at while you're in the middle of the game rather than before you download it. And it's not even like iOS is all that much better, since 92% of the apps on iOS are freemium.
Well, it's good and bad for the consumer. It's good because you get to try it before you buy it, right?
Right, and you do get a free version. It's certainly.
But also, you end up spending more than you would because if they were just charging for the game. Like, one of the most expensive things on there is the Final Fantasy games, which are like $15 a pop, and but you own it, right? It's a full version of it, and good for them for porting these over to Android. I think that's fantastic. But in the freemium model, over time, if you're doing the Angry Birds thing or what's the other the hot the Candy Crush, you probably end up spending a lot more than $16 over time.
You're so unhip, Dan.
Huh?
I said you're so unhip.
I'm not as cool as people think I am. But seriously, you'd end up spending a lot more than $15 over time in little pieces. So they win, and so yeah, good for them. I mean,
yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Stephen?
As I've been on these shows with you guys before, and big iOS fanboy for a while, I'm finding more and more good quality games on Android, the same ones that are on iOS, to either a lot cheaper or even free, and even ones with ads. I mean, I'd still rather pay for it, even if it was 99 cents, because I can't stand the ads on either platform. But I'll tell you, I find myself playing more games on my Nexus 7 than I play on my iPad, and that's I don't know why. I mean, maybe because the screen's a lot better. I mean, it's scary to hear me say that, right? Dan's ready to fall over with a heart attack, I think.
No, I think it's funny because, but I told you, I asked Steve on here because he tweeted, and we're gonna in our discussion segment, we're gonna just in just a few moments we're gonna talk about this. But he tweeted, he said, I'm loving my Nexus 5. I haven't touched my iPhone 5, and I always like to talk to. You have fanboys like on our Google Plus Week show. We have Craig Shipp and Sreek, who could give a rat's behind about an Android phone. Haven't touched one. You know, the last he trashes Windows. The last version he had was Vista, and then there's folks who are just diehard, you know, Android fanboys. And I like someone like you and like Michael Banks who are intimately familiar with both, and can give a good. These are the pros and cons. So that's what we'll talk about in a few moments. Bruce, did you weigh in on these game numbers? I think freemium's the way to go, and I am very surprised. I had heard about how that was taken off, but I wasn't aware it was 98% of the revenue. Apparently, that is en vogue, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. You know, of course, I'm not a game person, so I mean, I have a few games to satisfy my 6-year-old granddaughter when I'm taking her out, and we're having to wait a little longer for our pancakes to come from IHOP. A lot of coloring apps, she likes those. But I don't have any problems spending money for apps, especially if they're quality apps that are going to help me in my productivity, like my app of the week that I'll share with you later called Flight Predictor. So I don't mind purchasing apps. So whether it's a freemium model or not, I research the app, I read the reviews, I make my choice to buy based on what other people say, and along with my research. So.
Awesome. Okay. So we'll all, if I ever get around to writing another game, I'll make it a freemium game. I do it about every 30 years. I write a game. Okay, so this story was really cool. In India, there's a company that was doing like a $50 tablet, an Android tablet. And then now there's this company, DataWin. And I used to live in India. I lived there for 2 years. And it's an awesome country. And God, I miss the food. But DataWin began selling, this is from the Washington Post, they began selling their 7-inch devices in the United States on Monday. The least expensive model, the Ubislate 7CI, is a 7-inch Android-powered tablet for $37.99. And the guy hopes to have one for $20 within 2 years. Now, I remember when the first tablets came out, that I predicted, I think we all agreed that my thinking was that these were going to get cheaper, way cheaper. That the first ones were like the first calculators. Bruce and I are old enough to remember that there was a news story many years ago. The first calculator that was under $100. It was a Texas Instruments $99.99 for a calculator. Now they're throwaway items on business cards, solar powered, and we've seen this with computers, right? The computers today. I mean, the first ones were like $3 or $4 grand, and now you can buy a damn good computer for $3 or $4 grand. You can get a really good one for $1,000.
When we talked about this, a year and a half ago, I was predicting that it was going to be Pan Digital that was out in front with the ultra cheap tablets. They had already broken $100, and I saw them continuing to plummet, and that just never materialized. These guys look like they're making a tablet that's very similar to what Pan Digital is offering. We're not talking the highest quality tablets here, but
this is not a Lexus.
It's the highest quality tablet.
Right. This is not an iPad with Retina. This is not a Nexus 7.
No, this is a relatively low quality, low resolution screen, low quality touch controls, and very low RAM. I'm actually amazed that they can get ice cream sandwich on this device.
It's still, for $38, it's a hell of a deal, don't you think?
Oh yeah.
And for a lot of really, low-income folks, or if you have a bunch of kids, it's stocking stuffer price point. It's an impulse buy. You don't care if your kid breaks it. Stephen, what are your thoughts on this? I think this is obviously a lower end device, but what an incredible thing to see a $38 7-inch tablet.
Well, it's kind of like my daughter. She's 5. She's got a iPad Mini, the first generation. And I was saying to my wife this year, I said, should we get my son one? He's only 1, and she's just like, man, I don't know. With him being that young and breaking something at $400 or $500, And so this would be perfect. I mean, you could get him something like this. He could get the fundamentals of just touching the screen. I know it sounds funny. It's like he'll know how to do that before he knows how to write, just like my daughter. But that's the age we're living in. I would so buy this for $38 and, give it to my son. I'd put some form of case on it, obviously. I'm not that stupid, but if it broke, or, a 1-year-old doesn't care about 1080p.
Right.
He just wants to do what his big sister's doing.
And their eyes are so good, they probably don't need it. Plus, yeah,
so
and in about a year, he can come on the show and he can all give us some tips on Android, because the way these kids soak up stuff,
Yeah.
But yeah, this is amazing. So I think this is fantastic. This is not a Lexus, but that's fine. This is a $38 tablet.
Well, what if you want to get into getting used to rooting and making, like you were talking about earlier, joking around about making apps? I mean, that's a great device that, like, okay, if you brick it, who cares?
Right. Is there? Do any of you guys know? Is there a in Steven's specific case? He's got a kid. Is there a launcher you can get? Because I know, like, the Kindle Fire have these things designed specifically for kids and monitoring and controlling what apps they can use. How would you go about that, Alan?
There are a number of tablets that are actually out there that are meant to be more kid friendly. The Tabo line being the one that I always keep talking about.
But if you wanted to take just a generic Android device like this one, and in his specific case with a 1-year-old,
I haven't seen a kid-specific launcher. I haven't looked too carefully for one, though, to be honest, because mostly I give my son the launcher that it came with, and he does fine with it.
It'd be neat if Fisher-Price or Nickelodeon or Disney or someone would come up with a complete, like, wrapper, like the Facebook Home was supposed to be and fizzled. Although I thought it was quite well done. If you were a huge Facebook person, I thought it was pretty good. It'd be neat if you could get sort of those safety features, those monitoring features, those controlling what they can access features. Kindle does it very well.
Google has increasingly been putting that right into the operating system. I mean, we saw these changes with 4.2 and 4.3 that introduced, restricted profiles and multiple accounts on a tablet. And those were clearly aimed at parental control type stuff, but they were horribly, horribly flawed. And this actually goes in well with the next topic that we have on our list.
Yeah, my last thought on that was it'd be neat if some company, either a developer company or someone like a Fisher-Price, would come up with an app where it was really easy and it just did it, and it was, for a non-technical person, some busy mom or dad who wants to just make it safe and whatever, to install it, and it works because it's kind of kludgy to have to go in the settings and do all that stuff, and then the next version it changes. It's just not something you would consider bulletproof safe. Steven, you're about to say something?
Yeah, my wife was just, she's listening to this as we're talking. She said, I posted a link in there. It's called the Nabi tablet. Nabi tablet.
Yeah, not Tabo, Nabi. Those are the guys that
Nabi, is that the one you were talking about?
Yes.
Because my wife was telling me, she said they always showed on Nickelodeon, and she said that I don't get to see that. So she's obviously down there with the kids. I don't know much about it, but apparently this, but still, for $100, I don't know, for a 1-year-old.
Yeah, this is I think in the $30 range. You're at the impulse purchase price. It's
right.
Throwaway product. $100 is a little different. But I know that anything under like $40, once you hit $40 or so, you got to stop and think. But $20-$30, that's a nice lunch. So I think it's a no-brainer. But I do wish someone would invent a good wrapper for kids that would work on any device, because all of us have extra phones sitting around, old phones that we've upgraded, and maybe you want to use that as an sort of like an iPod for your kid, right? Um, some sort of mini, like just
the
as a
problem
Wi-Fi
is those
device.
old phones are. The problem is the old phones are running old versions of Android, and quite honestly, we're all sick of those old versions.
I'll tell you what, though. I fired up because I'm using with my teleprompter. My Note 2 won't fit in it; it's too big. So I'm using my old Motorola Photon.
Wait, your phablet is too big?
I get almost turned on when he says phablet like that. Yeah, so I got my little Motorola Photon, which is running, Android like -0.8 or whatever. I think it's gingerbread, and it's still functional. They still get updates. I turned it on for the first time in a year, and there was like 500 updates, and everything still works. You still get a lot of the same Google Plus and Gmail features if you want, but it's like an iPod. It's not a phone. It's like a little tiny device that runs Android. It's still cool. But anyway, okay. So next up, I've been ordered to proceed. Google kills a cool privacy feature in Android that it didn't intend to release. And I was hoping you could explain this, Alan.
Sure. One of the features that was noticed in Android 4.3 was a screen in settings that basically allowed you to turn off permissions within an app. So we all know that when we install an app, we get this long screen that we never read, or at least most of you never read, that says things like, this app has access to stored memory, your network, your date of birth, your social security number, your bank account number, all of those things. So it tells you up front just how much of your security and privacy it's going to be violating. But your choices are basically you either accept that or you don't install the app. One of the things that this control screen lets you do is install the app and then deny certain permissions to it. So you could install an app and then not let it access your SD card, so it couldn't access all of your photos, or let you sign in but not give it network access, so it can't download all of those spammy advertising. So a lot of people found this and thought it was great, because this is a great feature of being able to turn off certain capabilities on an app-by-app basis.
As a developer, you think it's a great feature? Because I could see what a headache that would be.
Well, no. As a user, I see it's a great feature.
As a developer, it would be a nightmare, because you'd have all these unexpected. You might crash the phone, error messages, people giving you 1-star reviews because it doesn't work, when really they've set something that you weren't anticipating.
It shouldn't be able to crash the phone, but it would mean that your app might crash, and might crash a lot, if you're trying to do something that that's been turned off. And this is why Google has claimed that this page was never supposed to be available in the first place, because they didn't want this really, really bad user experience. I am hopeful that we're actually going to see this again at some point in the future, along with capabilities for app developers to see that something's been turned off and react to it better when it has been turned off. So I'm hoping that this gets officially supported at some point in the next release or two, and that app developers are going to be better prepared for it when it does get released.
Why do you think it was a legitimate mistake, and why do you think they pulled it?
I don't know. I think it was an early feature that really wasn't ready to go out to the masses yet. And I think it was pulled because there isn't a way for an app to determine what's been turned off, so that it can say, hey, I noticed that you've turned off my the auto spam feature. Unless you turn it back on, we're not going to run, instead of just crashing. Because crashing is a bad user experience. An error message is a good user experience, or at least a better user experience.
What about legacy apps, like an app that's been around for 3 years or something, and all of a sudden,
if they don't update, they're just toast.
Yeah, they're screwed, because they're...
Right, they're screwed. Or at the very least, maybe Google is also trying to find a way to trap it, so that if the app didn't respond to it and crashes, that it's going to be able to pop up an error message explaining why it's crashing. I think it's kind of clear that It just really wasn't ready for prime time. It was fine for people that were willing to play with Fire, but Google is getting tired of, letting people play with Fire and Google getting burned for it.
Bruce, what do you think? Does this make sense to you? I mean, in my opinion, I sort of trust an app developer or I don't. I'm not going to negotiate. I could see like something with Facebook or what have you, say, you can't see my contacts or whatever. But basically, I mean, I don't know. I see sort of a decision. You either install it or you don't. And it seems like this is kind of overcomplicated. What do you think, Bruce?
Well, my first reaction is negative because I don't like Google taking away things that they release, and they seem to have a habit of doing that. So my first response is, why did you take this away? And I think that this is something that, like Alan said, would be good for the consumer. Obviously, if it created a problem breaking, things on apps, then you certainly want to address that. But
the counter argument, though, Bruce, is why did they put it in the first place and not announce it?
Sure.
They never said it was there.
Right. But I like this kind of granular control where I can really fine tune. I mean, that's the way I am. We're geeks. I think like that. So to take away that level of deeper control is something that is I just don't like it. But I can understand they may have had a valid reason to do it. But
and then what are your thoughts on this? Because you come from an iOS background, Stephen, and one of the things like Craig Shipp, I don't know why I mention him so often on the Android show. He hates Android. But one of the things he mentions as an iOS, I mean, the biggest iOS fanboy, he says, Apple, it just works. You don't have to worry about any of that crap, the settings and going and changing. It just happens.
Well, Stephen, here's a question. From what I've read, or the two articles that I've read on this, both of them mention that iOS solved this problem years ago, which was news to me because I didn't know that iOS lets you have granular permissions like this. So can you clarify or explain that?
It did solve it, where it lets you go in and block things from like your location and location settings on iOS, and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't say it was years ago. I would say probably, what are we at, iOS 7? I'd probably say iOS 6. They kind of snuck it in there and was kind of like, here you go. You can change it, but it wasn't that deep of permissions. And even in iOS 7, it enabled some stuff that, unless you were a geek and you dug around on the internet, found that it's reporting your location to all these different places to help better the Apple's maps, because as we all know, that was an epic fail from the beginning. But all this other stuff, it was going back to the developers without your permission. And I don't know, like on the Android devices, I mean, that's kind of one of the reasons I've been kind of drawn to Android, was I can make my device exactly the way I want it. But my only gripe with it is some of these features only exist on the latest version. And correct me if I'm wrong, that goes true with Dan, with what you just said about these features that Google took away. Oh, Dan's not even there. Okay, so Alan, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. And this is actually one of the bigger problems with Android, is that they're finally getting it right. And that's great if you're able to get to the latest version, but it's not so great if you're stuck in the dark ages of, 2 months ago. Some of us.
I mean, Bruce, you just literally got 4.3 today.
Correct.
And that was my biggest gripe. I went out and bought the S4, and I tried to everybody's like, oh, 4.3 is out for the S4. So I hook it up to Keys. Keys says, well, I'm not compatible with this version of Android, which is 4.2. I'm like, how is it not compatible? So I download the latest update of Keys, which is 3, or the beta, which was like 3.1 or something. Keys says, we're sorry, but you don't have the latest version of Android on there to run on this. So I go to over the air. Over the air says, there's no update, and your update was interrupted. I'm just like, enough is enough. So I just downloaded it and sideloaded,
Okay.
and my wife is using it now.
You were rooted when you tried to do the over-the-air.
But I unrooted. I finally got fed up with it. Yeah.
Right, but if you were rooted when you did the over-the-air, you're going to get that this installation was interrupted, which is what I got on my installation tonight.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Right.
Alan, how do they take it away? I don't understand that. I got called out. I slipped away for a moment and.
Okay, well, the short version of how they take it away. What do you mean take it away?
You said that it was in the release and then they took it away. Was it in 4.2 and then took it away in 3, or what was it?
It arrived in 4.3, and in 4.4.2 it was removed.
Okay.
Anyway,
do you think it was an accident? I saw it portrayed as an accident, like oops. Or do you think it was like a kludgy version and they said, well, we're going to take this away because we want to work on it a little bit longer before, after getting developer feedback about the issues?
I think it was unintentionally put in, yeah.
How do they is it that disorganized?
Well, no.
It was fine when the founder left. Now
things like this can sneak in because if it's a feature that they're working on for the future, they may put it in and yet not enable it for who knows how long. And if it's something that they're that they have use of internally and want to use it internally, they may leave it in for whatever length of time until it finally becomes an officially supported thing.
Okay. And then one thing I wanted to note here, we see some in the comments, some folks have noted that no one's using lower thirds, and that was a coincidence. They just didn't turn them on. But I think Rich asked, how come they don't have them? And then Kadea said he likes it because with the other crap that I put on, that it's almost too busy if everyone has lower thirds on. And I actually prefer it without it. I think it's a cleaner thing, but I wanted to get your view watching. If you could comment, the live viewers or afterward. Most people watch afterward. But if you could weigh in on that, because that's interesting. And then any of these other comments you want to highlight, Alan?
Yeah, we had this quick one from Cadeus. On the iOS side, when you request GPS information, the OS asks the user if it's okay. Same with photos, contacts, anything else considered user data. That's a valid point, but I remember also, it's only been a year and a half, 2 years at the most, less than that, I'm pretty sure, that contacts were not a restricted set of user data, and that any app had full access to the contacts database without asking your permission. And us on the Android side were kind of laughing at that because it required explicit permission up front in order to install the app. So, we were feeling smugly superior then, and clearly we don't now.
Smugly superior.
Yeah, well, welcome to the fanboy world.
Let me
which goes, I think, into our discussion.
Well, let me on the Microsoft, the phone thing.
If you insist.
Let me do this comment from Rich first. I have one of the first Windows phones, and I would like to find a use for it. Problem is, I hate that I'm forced to use Zune. Any recommendations? Does anyone have a recommendation for Rich? And that's a lead into our next topic.
I think it'll work okay as a door stopper.
You could use it to cover up your Chromecast.
I don't know. We can probably, between your Windows phone and my Samsung Insight, we could probably injure, large animals at a few hundred feet.
I'm not sure if there's a wireless IP cam app for the Windows phone, but if there was, he could stick it in his window and use it for an IP camera outside his house. He could duct tape it, to look for deer sightings or whatever, That's what my sister-in-law does with one of her old Android phones. We installed the wireless IP app, and she just has it as one of her many security cameras. Just keeps it plugged in, charging, and doing its thing.
Dan, what's this story about Microsoft considering that they're going to actually give away Windows because nobody's buying it?
Yeah, well, the one metric here is how relevant is this? I mean, I don't know if they're charging 50 cents or $50 to put Windows as the operating system on a phone. I don't know what their licensing is. I don't know if there are minimums, because like if a carrier wants to carry an iPhone, there's minimums involved, that sort of thing. And so there's a story from The Verge. Microsoft considers free versions of Windows Phone and Windows RT to battle Android. And the subheader there, Redmond wants to counter Mountain View. And it says they're considering making Windows Phone and Windows RT available free of charge to device makers. Sources familiar with Windows plans have revealed to The Verge that the future versions are under serious consideration by OS chief Terry Myerson. We understand the plans aren't fully set in stone, but they're part of broader changes Myerson is planning for the future of Windows. Microsoft is currently planning and developing future updates, including a threshold update that's designed to bring back the Start menu and provide more flexibility for desktop users. So this comes on the heels of $1 billion chargeback because Windows RT was a disaster. The hardware, the tablet, the lower end version of their Surface, and the Windows Phone is not gaining traction. They've just either experienced a pending retirement or a firing of their CEO, and they're locked in a vicious battle with Google with this ridiculous Scroogled campaign. But as much as I troll Microsoft and can't stand the Scroogled campaign, I think it's malicious and unfair, and beneath them.
And we'll be covering the Scroogled campaign more on our Friday night show, Google Plus Week.
Absolutely.
Appearing Friday, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific.
Be afraid, Microsoft. Be very afraid. They are scared to death.
Well, here's the thing. I actually think this is very smart.
It's desperate.
Now we're going to see if now we'll be able to say they can't even give it away because we'll look at the numbers if they do this. But no, I think this is actually smart because they could have some sort of Windows store and sell stuff, and the same way that Google does with Android, and RT. If they would open it up, because the whole thing, Apple had the computer. And it was a closed system. And then IBM came out with their personal computer, and it was open architecture, and they allowed anybody could build it and just buy Windows, and that's why the Windows platform took off like it did.
There's a lot of caveats to that, Dan. You got to remember, IBM.
Go ahead.
IBM licensed all of its components, and Windows was a very, very heavily licensed product. So it's not like you were getting stuff for free. It's that you were able to get stuff at all. Unlike Apple, who made sure that nobody could do that. And you'll remember that when Apple started to go that route, when it started licensing its hardware and selling its software, that's right around when Apple started to take a nosedive.
True. I mean, Apple's obviously very healthy financially. Microsoft is...
also very healthy financially, we should point out.
And when they actually sued a guy who was making Mac clones or Apple clones or whatever back in the day. You can still make a Hackintosh. You can still build a computer and put iOS on it or OS X on it, but
not legally.
Not legally, and you You certainly can't sell it. But there are whole websites devoted to how to do that. They call it a Hackintosh. And it's kind of a thrill, I guess, to do that because you're, beating Apple or whatever. But what are your thoughts on, Steve? What do you think about giving away Windows RT and letting carriers, develop or manufacturers make phones with the Windows Phone software without having to pay royalties? Do you think this is smart? B, do you think it'll work? And C, why do you think they're doing it?
Windows RT failed on the tablet. Non-existent, irrelevant, don't care. They can give it away to me, and I'll just give it right back. Don't care.
Did it fail because the Surface RT sucked, or did it fail because the software sucked?
It failed because they tried to emulate things that have already been out, that other companies like Apple and even Google have done and been doing. They're way ahead of the curve. Microsoft should have did that years ago. And that's the biggest problem even with Windows Phone. Windows Phone, it may have a great operating system. Heck, it might have a good layout and everything, but there's no apps for it. They should have did that years ago when they had the first touchscreen devices, but it took Google and Apple to make something that people actually wanted to buy with touchscreens that you didn't need a stylus to sit there and monkey with. I mean, I just think that Microsoft is really grasping at straws here with everything that they're doing, and they're trying to do stuff that, heck, Apple and Google have been doing now and being very successful with for years now. I mean, that's just my 2 cents. And so if they're going to give away the operating system, they should have did that years ago.
Bruce, let me ask you, the Transformer Prime came out, and that was a really neat concept of basically like a tablet with an attachable or detachable keyboard. So you could kind of, it's sort of like a laptop, but you could take the screen off and have a tablet. And then they announced the Surface. And I was actually excited and thought that was cool because with tablets, traditionally, you have, apps that are scaled down versions of what the full desktop computer would run. And there are programs that I use on desktop like InDesign, Photoshop, the full-blown versions in my newspaper business that I can't use on my tablet. And the thought of mixing those together was very exciting to me. And then it came out, and it was a disaster.
Let's face it, the Surface RT is just a ghetto product.
It's ghetto.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, and let's I mean, I know some people who have Windows phones and like them. I don't know if you've been watching some of the reviews, but there's 3 or 4 companies that are making 8-inch Windows Surface Pro tablets, the Dell Venue being one, quad-core Atom processor, that are running full-blown versions of Windows 8.1, and they're selling for $300, a little under $300. A Windows Surface Pro tablet, 8-inch, with a keyboard, might be a pretty decent option for some people if they're looking into the tablet arena. I know a lot of the programs that I run for business, and they're certainly not as intense as far as needing larger screens like some of the stuff that you do with editing of paper and so forth. But a lot of the, like running Cisco AnyConnect, Cisco IP Communicator, Cisco Agent Desktop, Supervisor Desktop, all of those would run on that 8-inch tablet and would give you an opportunity to, to do some serious work in that field. And so if somebody likes their Windows Phone and they see, the combination of a full-blown $300, a little less, Windows 8.1 Surface Pro combo, with a keyboard, that might make sense for some people.
But are they staying with the Windows Phone? Are they buying the Windows Phone because they actually like the ecosystem? Or are they buying it because they're so engulfed in the Microsoft ecosystem that they can't picture themselves using anything else? And do they really care that they don't have all the apps that you and I and everybody on this panel use on a daily basis? I mean, that's the question that I'd like to ask.
Yeah, most of us, we either have an Android phone and an Android tablet, or we have an iPhone and an iPad. And I'm just saying, I think there are going to be some people out there who will want a Windows Surface Pro tablet and a Windows Phone. That might work for them, so. I know I'm quite happy with an Android phone and the Chromebook myself.
Okay. And the best part of all is if they do this, and they don't get any market share, we can troll them further by saying they literally can't even give it away. So we're all looking forward to that. Not that we would ever dance on Microsoft's grave or anything, of the sort. Okay, so we're going to, in just a moment, we're going to do our recommended apps of the week. But first, I wanted to have a little discussion with Steven about a tweet he did today. And he basically said he's loving his Nexus 5 and that he hasn't touched his iPhone 5 for several days, that he's having a ball with this thing. And I always love, we have Android fanboys on this show, and on Google Plus Week we have a mixture of the Apple fanboys are outnumbered by the Android fanboys, but still, I always like to talk to folks who actually have intimate knowledge of both devices in their modern forms. And so I wanted to get Steven's take on why you got the Nexus 5, what you think about it, how you compare it to the iPhone 5, what you think the strengths and weaknesses are of each device.
Well, yeah, I mean, I haven't touched it. I got this about 2.5 weeks ago. Right when the shipping went down to 1 to 2 days. I got the white 32 gigabyte model. I've been toying with this ever since it came out. Like, do I really want to buy another Android phone? I had the S4, which my wife is now using, and I'll get to that. She's a pro iPhone user. But I'm like sitting here. I really liked my Galaxy Nexus when I bought it. The thing of it was that Ice Cream Sandwich, which I think we'll all agree had some shortcomings, and it had some issues, and I just couldn't get it to do what I wanted it to do, where I could grab the iPhone and it would just do it. And with the S4 with TouchWiz, I never understood why people complained so much about that until I started really trying to do intense stuff with it, where I was trying to have it configured a certain way with certain apps to ring a certain way or to call a certain way. With it just wouldn't do it the way, but with the Nexus I can do it. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to break down. I'm going to get it. So I got it, and I'm like, I hope this is not a bad experience and I'm not selling this in a couple days. And I started playing around with it, and I'm going, wow, this is snappy. First thing I did was the swipe test. I'm sure you see it all the time where people take it and they just move their finger, and seeing how responsive it was. And I was floored. I really was, because I didn't expect that when I got it. I honestly thought I'd be probably getting rid of it or selling it. And then I started reading up on it about the enabling the developer options and going in. I believe it's called Art. You can enable. I know it's beta, but under the developers options, you can enable the runtime Art instead of Delvic. And so I enabled that, and I know some apps don't work with it. I knew that going into it. But I came back in, and I'm putting them side by side with the iPhone, because everybody always says, there's still a little lag with Android compared, and I was one. Compared it to the iPhone, and I have to say, in all honesty, and even I showed it to my wife, I said, I think the Nexus 5 running 4.2 is faster than the iPhone. I was floored, because I didn't think I'd ever say that. I mean, it's, don't get me wrong, it still has some quirks about it. It's got some issues, but the quirks and issues aren't making me want to sell the device. I mean, I've come into the, like I said, some apps don't work with Art. It'd be nice if they all worked, but I knew that going into it's a beta thing. So putting it side by side with the iPhone, my shortcoming with the Nexus 5 is I really wish, with the beautiful screen that it has, that these developers would take pride in their apps and make freaking high-resolution icons for their apps, not ones that were from 3 or 4 revisions of Android ago. That's one of the big complaints I have. What good is a high-res screen? And this goes for the Nexus 7 as well. If you're not going to take pride in your app, and when you open it up, it looks like it's from, gingerbread or something like that. I mean, to me, that's unacceptable when you've got a device like this. That's where the iPhone shines. All the apps look polished. They look beautiful. I mean, the icons. I mean, it's like, that's that experience that you're getting with that. If Google could grasp a hold of that and get these developers to say, listen, fix your icons, fix your artwork in your applications, Apple's in trouble.
That's a clear advantage of a closed system versus a fairly fragmented system, where everyone knows what's coming ahead of time and to get ready for it.
Yeah.
And there's a limited number of devices. So that's definitely a strength
all
for
of them
Apple.
Are 720p though.
Sure.
Dan. So a lot of them are a lot of the devices that you can buy now are only 720p, 1080p, unless you're buying, one that's a couple of years old that you're buying off of somebody. So they could upgrade their artwork, right?
So, Bruce, I'm curious to get if you have any questions for Stephen on this issue, because you went from an iPhone when you bought the Note 2. You had an iPhone 4 or 4S, and you bought the Note 2. Do you have any questions for Stephen about his recent switch?
Duke Carrico just got the Nexus 5. He had the original Note. He loves the Nexus 5. got a good friend of mine that got the Moto X, and he likes the Moto X. You know, and both of them are running the latest versions of Android. And I haven't found, of course, you know, I just did a backup because I'm doing a factory reset trying to get Wi-Fi back on this phone. And so I've got about 240 apps on my phone. You know, the great majority of them, you know, I haven't used. And I really need to, you know, go ahead and clean house. But I've not noticed a great difference between apps, you know, that, you know, when I first got my Note 2 and it was running whatever version it had, and then it went to 4.1.2, and then AT&T skipped over 4.2 and went to 4.3. I know my wife has a Galaxy S4, and it came with 4.2.2, and then she got the upgrade to 4.3, and everything seems to be working fine there. But you know, I do understand, you know, that Apple's got the more closed system, but not even all of their developers are quick to upgrade their apps as well. So Android's not the only people with that problem.
Alan,
I agree with that.
Anything you want to add to this, Alan?
Not really.
Okay.
He's just like, whatever. Well, my wife is now using my S4, and she likes the size of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But her big issue was camera with Android. She seems to think that's one of the big setbacks with Android, and all the people complained about the camera on the Nexus 5, and I got it. I thought it was shooting pretty good. When they did the update, it was even better. And I posted a couple pictures on my Facebook of my cat, and I'm like, how can people say this is garbage? I mean, it really did. But that's a big deal for my wife, and she said the S4 camera is not as good as my iPhone. I think we can all agree that a lot of the devices with Android, the camera's just not quite up to par as somebody that has an iPhone.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, we're going to do our recommended apps of the week, and I'm going to start just by, let me grab my box here, because I don't have the actual product. I did this, I think this was last week, I talked about this, but I just want to update this. Basically, I don't have an app of the week, so I'm gonna do this because I was really impressed. Listech is I have this teleprompter. Now, if you look at the picture here, it screws right onto your camera. So I have an NEX7 camera, which is my main video camera now, and this thing screws right on there, and then you put a phone in the bottom, and it'll work with up to about a 4-inch phone. This model number is the PW04. Meaning it's designed for a phone up to 4 inches, and it works up to 10 feet away. So I'm going to do a video review of this thing in depth soon, but I'm still working out some kinks. So I've been on the phone a few times with Lisa at Listech, and what is shocking and what I want to highlight is, first of all, this thing is $200. Now, teleprompters, Steve, you'll back me up on this, are ridiculously expensive.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, absurdly, like $5,000, minimum $1,500 for a real one. This thing is built like a tank. It looks professional. It's wonderful. It works, and this is an interesting product from this company, which builds, you know, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 teleprompter systems. For an example, when you look like at ABC News in their ABC News studio on the bottom. Under the teleprompter, there's it's called a talent monitor, so they can see the actual program going out. So the camera, they're looking at the teleprompter, the camera's behind the teleprompter, and then right underneath that, so the script is here, and then underneath that is another monitor, about a 15-inch monitor usually, that shows the actual program with all the logos and the ads running and everything. Just that monitor, a 15-inch color monitor, is like $5,500. I mean, these are, you know, niche products. And this product, I talked to the product lead, it's sold in a year and a half, like in the hundreds, not in the thousands. So it's a niche product. But it's $200, which is ridiculously cheap. So I'm on the phone and I'm talking to her, and she's this wonderful, funny person, Lisa. She is in charge of the whole Listech line of teleprompters. and she's the designer for them. She works with the manufacturers. She's like, I'm gonna get some glass samples and cut them, and you can just call her up and talk to her. And she worked through, I was talking to her about an issue I had where if I import the text file to the prompter, which you can do either by copying and pasting, or you can edit it on the little controller, or you can import it via Dropbox. And she said my problem was it was eliminating the line breaks. So if I had paragraphs, it was jumping, bunching them all together. And so she said, email me the file, I'll fix it. And I also suggested to her, I think it'd be cool if they had a mount on the back for a Logitech C920. And I also thought it would be cool if they could figure out a way to put Google Hangouts and Hangouts on Air and Skype calls or any kind of video conferencing thing, basically let you do a little monitor in your teleprompter, because in every Hangout on Air, everyone's looking at the monitor instead of looking at the camera, because that's where the people are and this is where the audience is. Wouldn't it be neat if you could raise this up and you could be looking at the camera the entire time, and I could see Bruce, Alan, and Steven and have a conversation this way so the audience sees I'm looking at them. And I think there's a demand for that. If they can keep in the $200 or $300 price range and have a good quality, sturdy product. She's just incredibly responsive. I just can't say enough about it. I'm not being paid by them at all. But I just, I'm really impressed. And so this is not an Android app per se, although there's an Android app called Promptware Plus or Pro or whatever. But if you look for Listec prompter, whatever, you'll see it. So that's my app of the week, Listec. I'm just blown away that I bought a $200 product, and I probably spent an hour on the phone with this lady, and she's
another hour on the show talking about
funny and awesome and great. So there we go. Alan Furstenberg, what is your recommended app of the week? And Steven, as a heads up, pick any cool Android app that you want to talk about that you've been playing with lately. That's at the end of the show what we do. Go ahead, Alan.
My recommended app of the week, Google+. Latest update is out. Adds nifty new features like Shake to Snow. Funny little hearts drifting all over the thing. Other cool features. Get it. Use it. What's your app of the week, Bruce?
Are you serious? All right. My recommended app of the week is Flight Predictor. Now, I have the U.S. Airways app. I have the Delta app. I have, let's see. I have an app. Well, I've restored my phone, so I factory reset my phone, so I can't find it right now. But there are a number of apps that are very helpful. There's one that does what Flight Predictor does that's become very well known and popular in the iOS family. So somebody came up with this thing called Flight Predictor. I'm going to go ahead and share with you some of the pictures, but let me tell you the benefit of this. I flew to Florida last Monday, which was when we had this big ice storm here. We had somewhere between a quarter to a half an inch of ice. My 7:30 a.m. flight out of Lynchburg to Charlotte was canceled. They rebooked me on a 2:21 flight, which got delayed twice, which got me into Charlotte late. I missed my connecting flight. But somebody had told me about this app, and so I installed it while I was waiting during this flight delay in the Lynchburg airport. And what it does is, you're looking at the picture right now that says back to flights. Let me see if I can get to, you get to this picture right here, and you see down here where it says add flight. So if you click add flight, it will bring you to a screen where you can pick enter the particular flight, and I'm trying to see. Evidently they don't have a picture that shows you that. But when you click down here, add flight, it has a drop down for the airlines, and then you put in the 4-digit flight number, and then it will take you to another screen that says, "Is this the flight you're talking about?" You say yes. You click on that, and then it adds that flight. So once you've added that flight, it will give you all kinds of scenarios. For instance, it knew that the plane that I was going to fly from Charlotte to Melbourne, Florida, was coming from, let's say, St. Louis, Missouri, but the crew that was going to crew the plane once it got to Charlotte and going to Melbourne was coming maybe from, let's say, Baltimore. And it takes all these factors, what's happening with the plane that's coming from St. Louis and what's happening with the crew that's coming from Maryland, and it takes all this information and it predicts the possibilities of the delays. I found it extremely valuable. It's rated 4.9 stars. There is a light version if you want to try it before you buy it. but it also has with it this little picture right here will show you as a separate download. It has the airport maps. So if you're not familiar with a particular airport, maybe it's a new one for you, you can actually bring up a map for it. And you can put multiple flights in there. One of the things that I learned is once your trip is over, you better go back in this app and delete that flight. Otherwise, every 30 minutes or however you have it timed to give you those notifications, it will keep on doing that. But it is a great app if you travel a lot. I travel every month, and so that's my recommended app, Flight Predictor. It saved me some time. I was standing in the long line at Charlotte, because when they put you on another airlines, I was flying U.S. Air, you can't get a switch from one airlines to another over the phone. You got to be talking to a gate agent. So I'm in this long line. I got Flight Predictor. I'm running another app that I like and can't remember right now because I've wiped my phone. And I know that there are empty seats on a later U.S. Air flight to Atlanta, and there's a Delta flight, the last one to Melbourne, that's got empty seats on it. I was able to figure all that out using apps like Flight Predictor and others. So when I got to the gal at the front, I said, here's the deal. She says, you're right. Clickety clack 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 on the keyboard. In less than 5 minutes, here's your boarding passes. You got enough time to get to that, going from Concourse E to Concourse B. And I got into Melbourne a little after 11 o'clock. But Flight Predictor, it'll help you.
Can you say clickety clack one more time?
Clickety clack, clickety clack. I mean, she had one of those noisy keyboards. And you know what? Have you ever stood in one of those lines and you got to rebook because the flight was canceled? Okay, and you're looking at 4 different agents, and they're sitting behind this little kiosk area, and there's 40 people in line. If you're like me, I'm scoping out the agent I hope I get because I see them handling people faster, right? And I got the one I wanted. And she served me well. So,
see, I'm jealous of Bruce. He flies all the time. He's probably got a different girlfriend in every town. I was pick on Bruce. Thank you, Bruce.
Don't mess with me. I'm platinum preferred.
Oh, hey, I choose my fights carefully. I'm backing off.
Okay.
Okay. So Bruce, that's a great app. And Steven, did you have an app you wanted to recommend for us?
I actually got 2, but I'll be very quick with it.
Go ahead, sure. Alan likes long reviews, so go ahead, take your time.
No.
Just because Dan doesn't stop talking doesn't mean that you have to. So go ahead, share it with us.
So one of the big things that I really liked about iOS was the text app. Okay, just something that I'm used to. Call me set in my ways, but I found an app. Not that I didn't like the Google Hangouts one, but I found this app called Textra, and I really like the way it looks. It's got like the bubbles and everything, and you can change the theme to dark. Even my mail app, I like the back theme being dark, and then the text and everything in like lighter bubbles, so it's easier to read. It's just my preference. So that was something that kind of really helped solidify me here on Android, believe it or not, because that app just is so much of a reminder of the default iOS SMS app that it was like there was no learning curve with it. Whereas I don't know if you guys have used the Hangouts app with text messaging, it can be rather challenging with certain things. Just the way it groups everything together and the way it's annoyingly notifying you every time somebody from your contact list is also on a Hangout, and I don't know. It drove me nuts. Okay. So that was one. The other one, again, for iOS people, Find My iPhone was a big deal, especially when you have little kids, because the little kids like to take your phone, mess around with it, and it gets stuck in between the couch cushions and you can't find your phone. Well, one of the big things that I thought, well, this is kind of a bummer on Android, was they didn't have that. But now they do. It's called Device Manager. I don't know if you guys use it or have it, but it gives you your location, and that was something my wife and we just put it on our phones a couple days ago, and be able to, like, if your phone's on silent, you could say, oh, well, there's my wife's phone. It found it. I hit it, and you can tell it to ring, and it brings up like a GPS location of where the phone's at, and you can just you can ring it, lock it, you can do a remote wipe of it, and for somebody like me, that's kind of important, because like I said, with having kids, and like if you go to use the restroom and you lay your phone down on the couch, next thing you know, you come back and it's missing. be able to take like my Nexus 7, open up that app and find my Nexus 5 or my wife's Galaxy S4, to me that's huge. So those are two apps that I love.
Device Manager from another mobile device was only released, what, in the past week or two? So that's a fairly new change as well.
Yeah, so I kudos to Google for that. It's got a few little bugs, but hey, it's all. What did you say, Alan? It's only a week old.
The Device Manager from another mobile device is only a couple of weeks old. It's been available from desktop. You can trigger that stuff for a few months now, but the mobile version, mobile to mobile version, is fairly new.
So I'm not complaining with it. I mean, as long as I can do that, I'm happy, and it's only gonna get better. So that's my two really huge picks for this that really solidified me and kind of has got me going. Maybe next year I won't be buying an iPhone 6, that I will be looking at a Nexus 6 and getting away from these subsidies that these carriers are trying to rope you into, and getting pure Android as pure as it comes, at least right now in my opinion, and have the latest and greatest updates.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Good for you. And I had one last question for the whole panel, and this is totally unrelated to Android, but it was an interesting story.
We'll ask it anyway on this Android show.
Absolutely.
Which appears every Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.
On YouTube Live and Google+. Okay, so my question is this. Facebook came out and said they're going to start doing autoplay videos in the news stream. And then my first thought was, oh my God, what about people at work and they're sneaking into Facebook and then all of a sudden audio is playing, but apparently the audio will be muted. Is this a story? What was your reaction, or did you guys hear about this?
Bruce, what do you think?
I don't like to be interrupted by noise or videos when I go to a post or when I go to a website, unless I want to click on it to watch it or see it. Bad idea.
Steven, any thoughts on this? Autoplay videos?
I'm with Bruce on that. It kind of annoys me with some of those GIFs that people are putting up, because they're always auto playing and it's taking up so much resources. I'd rather be able to just click on it if I want to watch it. I think some of them are cool. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think, but the whole autoplay thing, I'm with Bruce on this one. I'd rather be able to enable the video or enable the GIF or whatever else they're putting up there. Same with music.
Alan?
Bad idea.
This is absolutely an issue, and it's an issue we're going to be covering on Friday, 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, on Google Plus Week.
All right.
I want to thank the whole panel, especially our guest for the first time on this program, Stephen Haywood, who's a recent convert to Android. And it's interesting because, like I said, I always like to see folks who are knowledgeable about both platforms, iOS and I say both, like I guess I should count BlackBerry and Windows, but just kidding.
But why bother?
Right. So I want to thank the whole panel, and we are here normally we're here on Monday nights, but due to a traveling situation, Alan was flying from, I think, was it the Bahamas or Hawaii? Alan, I can't remember.
From another undisclosed location.
Absolutely. So anyway, that happened. But thank you all very much. We appreciate it. We'll be back Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Until then, have a wonderful Android week. Peace out.